stop sharing my screen and welcome you all to tonight's LGBT Lounge and Learn called Solo Singles. And it's an event that came to us from you folks. You gave us the idea for talking about this subject. And we do think it's important. I've seen more articles on it lately. They've been just kind of jumping out at me, and we're happy that you're here and that we're having this discussion tonight. So big thanks to the Red River Rainbow Seniors for helping us with this content idea and ideas and support for programming. We really appreciate it. So before we jump right in, let's do a quick poll, and just to get a feel for how do we all feel about, do we feel like, do you consider yourself a solo senior? Lyle, if you want to go ahead and put up the poll, that would be great. And we can get that going. There we go. Just give us a clue. Tell us what you think there. If you consider yourself a solo senior or not, or maybe we'll talk more about it. And then, like I said, for those of you who might be watching it on YouTube, you won't see the poll. It's only for those watching live on Zoom here on the Zoom webinar. So, but for more than 60 years now, AARP has been working to promote the health and well-being of Americans 50 plus. And we continue that work with programs like this to help support diverse audiences. AARP, as you know, is a huge supporter of the LGBT population, and we are just thrilled to work with the Red River Rainbow Seniors and bring programming and connect with you folks as well. So, okay, well, thanks for your responses on the poll, and we're so glad to have Lyle Halverson with us. He's helping with the polls in the background, and Wendy Hogue from our office is also with us tonight and helping out with things in the background. And everyone be sure to stick around, because at the end of this evening's program, Lyle is going to talk, and he has some things he wants to share, some news he wants to share with the Red River Rainbow Seniors. So be sure to hang around for that. Also, if you're ever interested in helping us with these online programs, we're always looking for virtual volunteers who might want to help us on Zoom webinars. If you are, let one of us know. You can pop it in the chat. You can email us at aarpnd@aarp.org, and we'll address as many questions as we can along the way. So we appreciate that. So again, tonight's subject came from all of you, and we're ready to start. And so we'd love to have Dr. Jane Strumman and Dr. Heather Fuller turn on their cameras and their mics, and we're going to connect with our friends at NDSU and welcome them to this program. I know that Dr. Jane Strumman is a gerontologist, and Dr. Heather Fuller works in the 8 different aging areas, and I know together they are going to bring us a really good conversation that I think will be valuable for all of us as we move forward, because you know, you just never know. Lives can change, and situations change for people along the way. And so it's good to have this knowledge and good to have this information. And so great to connect with both of you again. I know that you're not unfamiliar to us at all. You have done work with us in the past, and we're really, really thrilled. So we want you both to tell us a little bit about yourself. And let's start with Dr. Strumman, please, if you would go first.
Well, thank you so much, Doreen. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I work with NDSU Extension, and my role as a gerontology specialist is to focus on education and outreach to the citizens of North Dakota. And I work with a wide range of aging issues, really emerging issues that we see across the state. And I work with a lot of evidence-based programs to help people be healthy and prevent disease and illness and those types of things, as well as a lot of issues around aging and community, kind of focusing a lot of my attention right now on aging in rural communities, which has some special significant challenges. But really I cover a wide range of issues, and just glad to be working closely with AARP North Dakota. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather.
We appreciate that. Thank you. And all the work that you have done, and good research, and very valuable. So Dr. Fuller, would you like to go next and tell us a little bit? I know you have spoken to the LGBT group before in Fargo in person. So
Yes, I have. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to actually lounge and learn in person, which was really fun. It was a great group. So I'm excited to be back with you all. So I am an associate professor at NDSU in the Department of Human Development and Family Science, and I do a mix of research and teaching. So half of my job, I get to teach classes about aging. And so I get to try to inspire our youth, our young 20-something-year-olds to want to work with older adults. And so I try really hard at that, and it's really fun to work with young people and see their spark for working with older adults. And then the other half of my work, I get to work a lot with Dr. Stroman in doing research. So my focus of my research is on social connections and relationships and family dynamics in later life, and the importance of all of these different relationships that we have for our well-being and health. So
oh, that's fantastic. Just fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for inspiring those young people to work with older people, because as we are all getting older, the baby boom generation and all of the, I mean, we're going to need all those young people to take care of us as we get older. So thank you for what you're doing in that respect. So, hey, Lyle, let's take a look at that poll to see what people did tell us about what they feel as, oh, look at this, 67% do consider themselves solo singles. So, great, just this is going to be a good conversation to have. I appreciate that. So thank you very much. That'll kind of set the stage, kind of interesting. Thank you all for your responses. We appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to let you two take it away. I'll be in the background and just holler if you need me, and I'll come back when you're done and we'll pose some questions and go from there. So great. Take it away, doctors.
So first, let me just check. Am I sharing the right screen? You're just seeing my screen.
Yes, it looks good. Yes.
This is my problem with Zoom, and I've been on Zoom for the past 1.5 years, but I never know which screen I'm sharing.
Fine.
So today, Jane and I are really happy to talk about this topic because it's such an important topic of aging alone and what are the strategies for successful solo aging. And we have a lot of different strategies that we'll talk about today. Let me just show you an overview of what we're going to cover. So we want to talk about first, what is it to age alone? What are we referring to when we're talking about a solo ager? And then we'll talk about some of the challenges and benefits of solo aging, and then some strategies to age well alone, because there are a lot of things you can do to be successful as you age alone or solo age. I'll talk about terminology a little bit next. And then hopefully we'll have some time for discussion and your questions. So let's talk about how we define solo aging. So AARP just this year put out a report all about solo agers, and the way that they're being defined is individuals over the age of 50 who live alone, are not married or partnered, and don't have living children, right? So solo agers is also sometimes referred to as elder orphans. Personally, I'm not as big of a fan of elder orphans as I am of solo agers, just because I feel like orphan kind of pulls some pity in there. It engenders a little bit of a different feeling than solo ager, which I think is a little bit more empowering. So while we need to recognize that solo agers need more support, I don't think that they need that kind of terminology. But solo agers represent about 12% of individuals over the age of 50. If we use that strict definition of living alone, not partnered, and not having any living children. But if we expand, if we're a little bit more lenient with the definition, we get up to 23% of people over the age of 50. When we survey people and find that many of them have children that maybe are not people they feel like they can rely upon for care, for financial support, for advice. And so it does get to be quite a few older adults or aging individuals that fall into this category. the things that we know about solo aging, first, it's becoming increasingly more common, especially with baby boomers. There are different types of situations that might bring a person to be solo aging. So it could be voluntary, entirely by choice. For instance, you know, your human agency, you didn't want a partner, you didn't want to have children, you wanted to focus on your career, for instance. Or often it's involuntary. So by circumstance, if you wanted to find the partner, but you didn't meet the right partner, maybe there were historical events that limited your ability to partner, or infertility that limited the ability to have children. So it's important to recognize when we're talking about solo aging, that some people chose the solo aging path and others maybe did not. It may be something more recent versus for some it may be long-term. Most individuals that are solo aging are living in their own homes and would like to consider living there as long as possible. So that's really where some of the strategies that we're going to talk about today really come into play, is that desire to be able to stay in our own homes and stay independent. How do we do that? So I mentioned that one of the factors that makes, or that some solo aging is by circumstance. And in the case of LGBT seniors, the circumstance that it's higher amongst LGBT seniors is because of historical context. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but because of a historical discrimination and laws and many different factors within our society, the ability to partner was a challenge, has been a challenge for many decades. And while we see this as changing for younger generations, our baby boomers and our silent gen older adults lived their adulthood in a time where it was much more difficult to partner and have children. So LGBT seniors are twice as likely to age as a single person. They're 4 times as likely to have no children. They're 2 times as likely to live alone. And so this is compared to their same age heterosexual peers. And then the most concerning here is that they're 10 times more likely to report not having someone to call in times of crisis. And this is information from SAGE, the National Resource Center on LGBT Aging. So something that really brings us to concern, especially for the LGBT population, and probably why this topic came up, because it really is in the forefront for LGBT seniors. So I'll shift to Jane.
Thank you, Heather. So we just wanted to pause here at this point and ask you a question about what challenges come to mind when you think of solo aging. We just talked, Heather presented some of the challenges, but if you would be willing to just type your response into the chat feature, we'll take a look at that. So we'll just take a few seconds here for you to type what you think are some challenges about solo aging. Managing a household, needing a ride to the clinic. Who will help when you have health challenges? Great specific examples of some challenges for folks. Well, thank you for sharing those, and let's take a look at some of those and maybe some other challenges in a little bit more depth in the next slide. Yeah, it was mentioned finding help when you're sick, or maybe you're hospitalized or you need surgery, and who can you count on to help during those unexpected times? Another challenge would be choosing a healthcare proxy, somebody who can make decisions on your behalf if you're in a position where you can't make those decisions for yourself. Another challenge might be having adequate social engagement or support really for your highest functioning of well-being. And with that would lead right into the feeling of being isolated to the point where you could potentially feel lonely as well. Another challenge is finding transportation, especially if an individual is having a problem with driving themselves for whatever reason. Maybe it's they're sick, maybe they're frailty from aging, and they don't have anyone that they can count on for some of those daily transportation needs. Another challenge is who will be a caregiver for them. We know that the most likely caregiver for a person is first your spouse, and second is adult children. And so where do we look to next for that caregiver if we should need one? And last is, maybe should have put this, affordable and appropriate housing as a person ages. We know housing is a very expensive item in our budget. And as we age, it might be difficult if we're aging alone to be able to bear that cost of housing and to find housing that is going to meet our needs as we age as well. So those are a few of the challenges, and thank you for sharing your thoughts as well.
Okay, but while we know there are some challenges to solo aging, I think we can also identify some benefits, some potential positives that come with solo aging. So our next chat question for you, if you can find that chat, should be towards the bottom of your screen. What benefits come to mind when you think of solo aging? Give you a few seconds just to think about it. Are there benefits? Are there positive aspects that come to mind? I see fewer responsibilities and more freedom, for sure. Yeah, freedom is a big one. Let me keep putting them in there as you think of them, but let me just go ahead and dive into what some of the research on this tells us. So this list is the top benefits that people identify about solo aging. So freedom is right up there, right? The freedom to get to kind of choose what you do with your life. Less relationship-related stress. There's a lot of stress that comes into romantic partnerships. There's a lot of stress that's related to parent-child dynamics. And so sometimes you get to avoid a lot of those stresses. Potentially reduce financial expenditures. So, you know, this varies from person to person, but in many cases, there may be less expenses because you're not having to pay for things for children and grandchildren, potentially. Privacy, getting to have privacy in your household, and getting to focus on chosen family, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but getting to pick those people in your life that you prioritize. That's another benefit. So most solo agers have positive feelings about living alone as they age. The common descriptors used by solo agers, that 60% said that it's positive because they're independent. 50% say they're satisfied as a solo ager. 38% said they're happy to be solo aging. And 18% say they're proud of being a solo ager. So we do really want to paint this picture that it's not a gloom and doom situation. There are a lot of benefits and positives to being able to have that independence, and especially if you can use some strategies to help yourself age as well as possible. The other piece I wanted to hit on here, and this is again from that AARP Solo Agers report, is the perceptions of quality of life. So I know this is probably too small to see very well, so I'll just walk you through it. And so there was a survey question here about your feelings about your quality of life as you age. So do you feel optimistic about your quality of life? Do you feel pessimistic, or do you feel neutral? And then if we look at these two bars, The one on the top are the solo agers, and then the bar on the bottom are non-solo agers. So those partnered older adults or aging adults. It's hard for me to call 50 older adult. So it's 50 plus. And so then the blue bars there are the individuals who feel extremely or very optimistic. And you can see they're pretty parallel between the two groups. The yellow bars are those that felt neutral, that they're neither optimistic or pessimistic. And then the 12 bars, these are the ones that we've been concerned about, right? Are the people that feel extremely or very pessimistic. And we can see the solo agers, it's 12%. But when we look at the general population, it's 15%. So solo agers are actually less pessimistic about their quality of life as they age. So there definitely are some good things. We're going to shift into what I've been alluding to is that we're going to talk about some tips for successful solo aging. So first we'll talk about making plans when you're healthy. Then we'll talk about reaching out to others and then taking care of yourself. So Jane will start us with making plans.
Thank you, Heather. You know, when we age, it's really important for us to be thinking toward the future. And it's important for us to do this planning when we're in good health, because it really gives us that gift of time to think about things, to talk about to others about our preferences and our decisions. And that's usually when we have more options available to us versus waiting for a crisis to happen before we deal with some of these very important issues for us. So I'm going to just be highlighting some of what I consider or would consider to be the big issues that we need to be thinking about for our future. The first one is housing, thinking about where do we want to live as we age. I think a previous slide shows that so many people prefer to live in their own home. So we have to think about, is our home safe to live in? Would we be able to live in our home if we became disabled or we wouldn't be able to use the stairs anymore? Is our home adaptable so that we could make it accessible to us should we have some disabilities, functional limitations as we age? Those are all important things to know. And what would those modifications be and what would they cost? I know AARP has a great resource called the Home Fit Guide that can help people understand what are some of those modifications that we can make to our home. And I see that there's a universal design webinar coming up next month or soon that I think will provide a lot of insight on this topic. Maybe somebody wants to move from their home to another community where there will be some opportunity for some social opportunities or engagement with others, or maybe to some type of housing community where support services will be available if and when the time would come where those would be needed. So those are all things that there's some thought that needs to be given and research about what is available for housing in your community and what would it cost. There's other housing options as well. You know, shared housing. Housing is a big cost. And so I think those are some important things to think about. In terms of legal considerations, we have to ask ourselves if we have the legal documents in place to authorize another person to make decisions that would be like legal, financial, or healthcare decisions on our behalf if needed. Some examples would be, you know, advanced directives like that healthcare proxy or a living will, or a power of attorney that would authorize somebody to help conduct banking and other businesses on our behalf if we weren't not able to. So those are all important things to think about. Regarding financial, it's important for all of us to be reviewing our financial situation and our finances, our bank accounts, our investments, our insurance coverage, what kind of loans we have. One important thing for us to think about is what will our what will be the cost should we need long-term care? A common misperception is that Medicare will cover nursing home or assisted living care, and in fact, very little coverage is provided by Medicare. Do we need long-term care insurance, and what would that cost? Can we afford it? Might we be eligible for Medicaid or veterans benefits? Those are all things that require some amount of research and to get all of those things prepared. Another consideration is healthcare. What is our family medical history? Do we have some chronic disease history in our family, like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, something that we would probably have a higher likelihood of needing some care down the road? So some of the things we have to think about, if we do need care, do we want that care to be in our home, or do we want it in a care facility? And then making those decisions, researching what is actually available in your community, and then again, what does it cost? So those are all big decisions. The last area that I wanted to talk about was the support team. And we know that when somebody needs care, or if you've ever been a caregiver for somebody, it's a very big responsibility, and it's typically more than just what one person can do by themselves. So it's really important that we think about who could be in our support network. And I know Heather is going to talk more about this in the coming slides, so I'm kind of going to leave it there, but just to think about, we really do need a network or a team that could be available to us should we need care. Something to think about too, as we're thinking about potential care needs, is that if we have some health problems, how do we figure out what it is that we might need? And some common things or assessments that we look at is, what would you need help with for personal care or household care, or maybe with your finances, or even supervision if somebody has beginning stages of dementia. Those are all important assessments that need to be done. And the last piece is really developing that plan of care. The plan of care is really a work in progress, but it's listing the things that need to get done and then who can do those things. Those are really important. And I know it's listed in the resources, but there's a really good book called Share the Care that provides a model of building a caring support network, especially for people who don't have families. And it includes really the tools and strategies and guidance on how to really develop that comprehensive plan of care, and really builds community for people who don't have a family. So with that, I will turn it back to Heather.
Yeah, so the next tip is to really focus on how to build your social connections. And let me start with kind of that negative side. So the research does show that solo agers do have a higher risk of loneliness and social isolation, as Jane mentioned earlier. So they tend to have less frequent social contact and more likely to report feeling lonely. So on this this figure here, it's a questionnaire that's getting at loneliness. And so, do you lack companionship? And you can see the red dots are the non-solo agers, where the blue dots are the solo agers. And so the blue dots, the solo agers, are much more likely to feel they lack companionship, and more likely to feel isolated from others, and also more likely to feel left out. So all of these blue dots on the right-hand side showing that we do see some risk to social connection for solo agers. So really want to talk about, how do we prevent some of those feelings of isolation? Because being a solo ager doesn't mean we have to age alone, right? I think there's a distinction there, right? That it doesn't mean because we don't have a partner or we don't have children that we have to be alone and we have to be isolated. There are so many ways we can connect to others and build that support network, as Jane just talked about. So this strategy is really about, how do you build that support network that you're going to need throughout your life. So whether it's seeking out new companions, new people at every stage of your life, finding what those commonalities are, what things you have in common, or perhaps fostering deeper connections with your existing relationships, finding ways to reconnect to the people that are already in your life. There's a lot of different places you can look to build that support network. What's important is that you're proactive and intentional. And for a lot of people, this means stepping out of your comfort zone to actually reach out and ask people to connect with you. One way to do this really is to focus on shared interests and that reciprocity, that give and take. People are looking for connection. And in this world today where there's so much social media and so much kind of just passive connection to other people, of all ages are looking for ways to connect. And maybe we're just kind of a little bit too set in our ways and too, I don't want to say lazy, but if I'm talking about myself, it's lazy to take the time to actually reach out and make those connections. So how do you connect with your support network? First, I just want to talk about extended family. Just because we're a solo ager doesn't mean we don't have any family at all. Solo agers rely a lot on their siblings, on nieces and nephews, on cousins, on other kind of in-laws and a lot of different types of relationships. So connect with those people. Those are the people that you often share life experiences with. You share advice with them, especially those younger generations, and you can build upon your common interests. I think there's always a way to reach out to some of those extended relationships and find either a common contact or a common interest or a reason to connect. And just an example within my family, I have an aunt who does not have any children or grandchildren, and she reaches out to my son quite often and has built a strong connection with him, initially because she saw he was an only child and she felt bad for him because he didn't have any siblings, and they've built this connection. And so sometimes you can find those other people that are in need in your life, and young people or people your own age, build that connection. But then of course, friends are so important. And there's a lot of research on the value and the importance of friends these days. Within research, we call them fictive kin. But then you see a lot of calling names like family of choice, chosen family, found family. If you have your favorite names, feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A. I think the Q&A might be working better than the chat right now. I love all the different names that people come up with for their chosen family. They can stand in for relatives and stand in that place that maybe other people would rely on a spouse, that you can rely on a best friend. And they do provide deep and meaningful bonds. It's increasingly common amongst baby boomers and especially generations younger than the baby boomers. And when we look at solo agers, this is really a critical avenue of support. And as I mentioned, the research actually shows that friendships are even more beneficial, can even be more beneficial to well-being than family. And I talked about earlier that there's, stresses that come along with family relationships. When you get to choose the close people in your lives, there's often less of those stressful negativity in those relationships. And then once we've chosen our network, we've built that network, we need to find ways to rely on those chosen people, which is often difficult, especially in our region of the country. We tend to be stoic and not want to ask for help, but being able to reach out for help when needed is really important. Keeping in mind that most people desire to help when asked, right? So if a neighbor asks me for help, if a friend asks me for help, I am ready. I'm ready to show up. And I think most people are like that. And so being willing to ask for that help is really important. The graphic that I have here on the bottom just shows who solo agers are most likely to rely on for help with things around the household. And the highest reliance is on friends. So 39% say that the most common person I call is one of my friends. They also rely on other relatives, so a variety of different relatives, 31% of the time. Next, we have siblings, 26% of the time, nieces and nephews, and then neighbors. And I think a lot of people are building great neighbor relationships, especially during COVID when we're kind of trapped at home and doing a lot more, waving at our neighbors. So the second point here is sharing your life with others. So consider whether, ways that you can share your life with others, whether living alone long-term is in your best interest. Is that what you want long-term? There's a lot of really neat options out there for co-housing, and it's a really good way to build social connections. I'm actually seeing a lot of Golden Girls model. That was something back in the 80s that, was a show that was, seemed pretty fictional. And it's not. It's gotten very common to live in some of those co-housing situations where you can build social connections and have that chosen family right there with you. So back to Jane.
Okay, great. Well, I want to ask a question, and we'll have to either use the chat or the Q&A function, whichever one is working best, but just really want to know what you are currently doing to be able to maintain your independence as you age. If you would be willing to share some things you're currently doing, that would be great. Walking every morning, that's great. Doing my best to exercise, keep moving, staying physically independent. I'm exercising physically and trying to enlarge my friend circle. Great. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing. We're gonna look at some things about taking care of yourself. We all want to be healthy and to live vibrantly and independently as long as we're able. And there are some things that we can do to take care of ourselves so that we can do that. And so the first thing I want to talk about is staying physically active, just the things that you were offering here, and that's great. Exercise and physical activity are considered a cornerstone of almost every healthy aging program. And there is emerging scientific evidence that supports that people who exercise regularly not only live longer, but they live better. And there are documented benefits of exercise, such as keeping and improving your strength, having more energy, improving your balance, preventing or delaying heart disease, diabetes and other disease, perking up your mood, and reducing depression. So there are so many reasons that exercise is just a key for us to be able to be healthy as we age. So I think we all need to think about what we can do to keep our bodies moving more as we age. Another important thing to do is practice preventative care. The risk of disease does increase with age, but some conditions can be prevented, or if not, the discovery of them early, or those conditions, can really increase the chance of a cure. And so some of the things that, when we think about preventative care is, those screenings for cancer, for instance, those screenings that we can do, and making sure those early discovery happens. We know that a healthy diet can reduce the risk of many diseases, such as diabetes and heart disease. We can reduce our risk by watching our cholesterol, not smoking, managing hypertension, avoiding obesity, stroke prevention. We can manage high blood pressure through diet and medication. Those are things that we can do. Osteoporosis, There's screenings we can do for that as well, so that we can prevent or discover early if we have that condition, and do things like weight bearing and calcium supplements to help with that. So there are many things that we can do to be proactive, to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Sometimes we take care of others, and we neglect taking care of ourselves. So those are important things. And we do know that there is really a strong association between healthy lifestyles, prevention, and longevity. So I think we all could benefit by thinking what we could do tomorrow to really improve how we take care of ourselves. And then the last thing about taking care of ourselves that I wanted to talk about is purpose. And why is purpose or meaning really important to us? Well, we do know that people who seek meaning beyond themselves are healthier, they're happier, and they live longer. So it's vital to our well-being to really maintain a strong sense of purpose. And so just to talk about what does purpose really mean? And purpose usually includes these things. It's something that we feel we're naturally good at and that we enjoy. We feel passionate and care deeply about, and it fits our values and the ways we prefer to operate in the world. And so when you think about, what does it mean when we're talking about values? Because sometimes that can be a term that's really hard to wrap your head around, and how do you identify that? And it's really those things that provide the most meaning to you in your life. And, some examples could be, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your faith, maybe it's giving back to the community, maybe it's lifelong learning, maybe it's taking care of yourself or your health. There could be many different meanings for a purpose, and it's all very individual. And there's a process for really trying to uncover what that is as well. But one of the common times that we probably start thinking about purpose more in our life is during retirement, because retirement is really a gift of opportunity and time to think about what gives us meaning in our life, and how does it make us feel. And so think about, it's really a time to just look at our options. Maybe we want to go back to work if we're retired. We could volunteer. Maybe there's something that you've always wanted to do with talents or lifelong learning a new language or skill, leaving a legacy for your family, for your grandchildren, maybe your community, exploring, traveling the world. That the options and opportunities are endless when you think about that. And it's a process to think about what would a perfect, purposeful retirement look like. And I would just say, if you can just have a mental image in your mind about what it would look like, who would be in it, what are you doing, what are those scenes that you're seeing when you think of your perfect, purposeful retirement. And so I think with this, that it's important to stress that it's important that what we do in our day-to-day life really aligns with our values and our priorities. And that doesn't just happen. Just like all the other phases of our life, we stress planning. It's important to plan for your retirement so that it just doesn't happen, that you do have a purposeful retirement. And you have to be very intentional about that. And there are many different resources, but I would offer up one book that I really like. It's called Purposeful Retirement: How to Bring Purpose, Happiness, and Meaning to Your Retirement. And it's written by Hiram Smith. And I'm leading a virtual book club right now, our second one that we've done. And it's really gives a much more detail than we can offer here in one slide about how you find that purpose, and then how you prioritize that and how you plan so that when you go to bed at the end of the night, you can feel like you've made an impact. So that would, those three things, I think, really taking care of yourself, being physically active, preventive care, and finding purpose in your life are really three important things that you can do to take care of yourself.
Okay, so our last question for you for the chat or for the Q&A, if you can put your answer in the Q&A, what can you do or what do you do to support the solo agers in your own life? So many of you are solo agers and you have other solo agers in your life, and many of you weren't solo agers. So I'm sure that you have solo aging individuals you love. What can you do to support them? What do you do? What do you think you'll do in the future? Give it just a few seconds if you want to type something in there for me. This will be the last time we'll make you join in the chat. One of the things about COVID that makes things much more challenging is not being able to just chat live in person. Join in common interesting activities. Yeah, so spending time together with shared activities is a great way to support your solo aging friends. Reaching out to them, saying, let's have lunch, let's go to the movies, let's get together. Great, check in with each other on a daily basis. Let's see, oh, here's a long one. My neighbors have a group text that stays active and check in on each other often. And I live in a neighborhood of several widows, widowers, and retired people, and we do yard and street gatherings to stay in contact with everyone. That's great. Yeah, those are all great ways to interact. Let me just show you a few of the statistics on this. So the majority of people over the age of 50 know someone who's a solo ager. So it's about 2/3 of people over age of 50 that say, yes, I have someone in my life that is a solo ager. And the vast majority are friends. I know this is too small to read and I apologize. I couldn't enlarge it, but it's friends here that 80% of them said, yes, I have a friend in my life. 34% said a neighbor. Next, people that have brothers and sisters or some other relative, or maybe it's a coworker that's a solo ager in their life. So it is quite common. Let's see, one more I saw just pop up here. Helping them with shopping, groceries, asking them if they need anything and helping them with those things. Yeah, that's great. And those are all the types of things that we're seeing from this AARP survey of what people are doing to support the solo agers that they know. And so the dark blue is currently things people are doing for the solo agers in their life. And the lighter blue is help they expect to provide in the future. So this top one is connecting, checking in on them to make sure they're okay. The second bar, so you can see a lot of people are doing that, checking in on solo agers in their life. Helping them get to or from doctor's appointment is common or is expected in the future. Discussing their plans for getting the assistance they might need while aging alone. There's a lot of research that suggests that whether it's solo agers or not solo agers, that older adults are not great at planning ahead, right? And so sometimes just sparking those conversations. It's better to plan when you're 60 for what you're going to need in 30 years than to have the decision out of your hands, right? Most people want to be able to make those decisions. So having those discussions with people in your life, helping them manage their household, like cooking, cleaning, getting groceries is another one, helping them manage their day-to-day expenses, like monitoring their bank accounts or keeping track of their bills. And then the last one, which was the lowest, is helping them manage their investments. I think we could probably note some things that are maybe missing here. And calling back to some of our earlier conversation is, in addition to checking if people are okay, are you offering help? It's hard for people to ask for help. Are you able to offer that help and actually offer kind of really concrete help, right? I see that you don't like gardening. Can I come over and help you with your weeding? I'm not a solo ager and I would take that offer personally. Are they being proactive in their lives as well, right? So are the solo agers able to ask for what they need? So things to really think about. There's another comment that came up here. I've heard there are financial professionals that basically take over paying bills and doing basic financial management for seniors, primarily as a senior may become less cognitively able to do so. How common is this if you know? That is definitely common. And that's, you know, I think one of the things Jane talked a little bit about, not necessarily a health proxy, but yes, you can actually hire someone to be your power of attorney in financial aspects as well. You know, Jane, do you have anything you'd add on that question? Are you muted?
Yes, there are different financial people, bankers, others that can be hired to take care of your financial affairs that you need done. I know there's getting to be more geriatric care managers who will take care of an array of aspects of your life. So it is something that, you know, people are wanting these types of services. So we're seeing more of these services crop up across the state and all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's great. And feel free to throw any questions in the Q&A that you have about anything we've gone over, because we know time is starting to run short. So I'll just run through our take-home messages for today. And we have some resources that we can share if you'd like us to look at some of these now, but we could also share them with Doreen and Lyle so that they're shared with you via email later. But what we've talked about today is solo aging has its challenges, but there are also some benefits, and there's definitely a silver lining there that we can find. Strategies for successful solo aging, making plans, especially while you're still healthy, reaching out to your support network, building that support network, taking care of yourself so that you can stay as healthy and independent as long as possible. And then that last one we just hit on very quickly is reaching out to the solo agers in your life, whether you're a solo ager or not. It really does take a village, and we should all be connecting to each other. So I think maybe we'll give you some time for any questions. We'd be happy to have people put questions in the question and Q&A box. Also, feel free to reach out to either Jane or myself. We love hearing from folks.
That was great. Both of you did a fantastic job. Okay, we've already got one question in the Q&A. Who is the author of the Purposeful Retirement book? If you have that handy, Jane, that would be very interesting to know.
Yes, the author is Hyrum Smith, Hyrum, Hyrum Smith.
Very good. We'll get that. I see Wendy's typing an answer in for everyone, but that sounds really good. Excellent. Any other questions or comments at this point? The other thing I should just mention when you talk about purposeful retirement, one of the programs we're doing in November is a program called Are You Really Ready to Retire? And we're having a panel of 4 recent retirees who are going to talk about their experiences, what they wish they'd have known and what they wish they'd have done differently, or maybe, you know, or what they did right. So just an FYI, that's coming up on November 10th. But and you're all welcome to join us for that as well. But some great resources here. Do either one of you want to talk about some of these wonderful resources?
Yeah, I mean, so we can provide these for you all just to share with the group, but I just wanted to hit on a couple of them here. The first one, there is a support group on Facebook that has a lot of people, tens of thousands of people. I tried to join it and I was rejected because I wasn't a solo ager. So that's no, that's great actually.
Yeah, well, that's good. They're
The groups,
weeding them out. Yeah.
yeah, the groups should screen people. And so it's all solo agers. So I can give you all that link to that group, but it's all other solo agers across the US. And this is the link to that Share the Care book that Jane showed. So we can post that as well. And then the last link here is to SAGE, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which has a lot of different advocacy services for LGBT adults and can find some specific resources for LGBT seniors as well.
Very, very good. That's great. We will share those resources too. And we appreciate you. I know SAGE is an awesome organization, and AARP and SAGE work very closely together in a lot of ways. We have another question here, or maybe a comment. I think it says, I think it would be interesting to build or rent a joint home for solo and other agers, and then hiring the kinds of helpers needed, or, you know, everybody brings to the table what they can bring. And I know they're asking if there are some examples of this. And I know I've heard of some of that. Do you folks know of any of that, or have you read about that?
For sure. I mean, what I was alluding to, the Golden Girls situation, there is this movement now called NORCs, so naturally occurring retirement communities, where people are getting together and creating their own, you know, they don't want to move in a nursing home. They don't need to. They don't want to live in a big senior retirement community. And so they just either have shared co-housing, or maybe a neighborhood where we're going to buy houses together, and then basically go in together to hire the services that you might need together. And so create your own little retirement community. And, you know, often it's not the intention at the start. It's people that have neighbors of a similar age, and kind of realizing, hey, we could both hire this person. We could both hire this in-home care. But I think we're going to see more and more of that. You know, of creating these either shared housing or close by communities where we can share resources. NORC, yes, NORC is NORC, so naturally occurring retirement community.
That's fascinating. That, you know, it makes so much sense. I mean, when you think of, you know, what people can do together to keep one another afloat, and we can all help each other in this whole thing. And if you have a group of friends that, you know, our good friend Janice Cheney, who used to run AARP North Dakota and be our state director, often talked about that kind of thing. And she had dreamt of that sort of a situation where you just live in a place with the rest of your friends, and you age together, and you support one another, and you know, and I think we're going to see more of that, like you said, Dr. Fuller.
I think so, for sure. Yeah. This is our last page of resources, which is just a full page of AARP resources. So we'll make sure that we get these shared, sent out to the group. We can send our slides if anybody would like to see a copy of anything we've shared today too.
That might be great if we could get that, and then we can share it with others who may request it. But let me just move on just a little bit and keep things going. That was fantastic. You two brought some really insightful information to all of us, and hit on all kinds of really great notes that I think are very important to all of us. So thank you, and they're very, very good. So, and thanks also to Lyle Halverson and Wendy Hogue, who are in the background and helping out tonight. And I promised you that Lyle was going to talk tonight, and now is his chance. He's coming on live in person. It's Lyle Halverson.
Hey folks.
Our friend.
I probably look a little bit orange because of the lighting here. I had some technical problems when we were starting out today. So there were a couple of announcements that I wanted to make before the program. And then today, we announced that Cindy Roholt is the recipient of our Andrus Award for Community Service, which is the highest volunteer award that AARP gives once a year to a volunteer in each state. And then just a little bit about news about me, and some of you found out about this today on social media, but this will be my last program with the Red River Rainbow Seniors, at least as an employee of AARP. I've decided to retire, and I have to say that it's been more than a pleasure to work with the members of the Red River Rainbow Seniors. In a career that's spanned 40 plus years, my work with all of you has been a highlight. And from a personal point of view, I think helping to launch the Red River Rainbow Seniors has been one of the most rewarding things I've done in my career. So thank you for that. And I'll continue to be a member. So I hope to see most of you periodically. And with that, I'll send it back to Doreen.
Oh man, right when I'm about to like have tears coming out of my eyes, he sends it back to me. I should have known this would happen, but, and I knew it was coming, so I shouldn't be surprised, but I still don't even want to think it's true. But anyway, we're going to miss you, Lyle, and you've done such great work on the LGBT group and Red River Rainbow Seniors, and it's just awesome. But oh gosh, anyway, everyone, thank you all for being here tonight, and we just thank you for joining us for this Lounge and